a discussion about when do we have an environment that we know needs special care, okay? That we know has potentially hidden enemies, biological contaminants that exist on a carpet or a floor that look clean. And that's what we're really talking about measuring here. So I'm going to stop here, and we're going to show you a video that Sean was involved with just a few weeks ago. This was done, this little test was done by Jim Manis and Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner, and it was done at the Experience Convention. But I want you to listen carefully to what they say.
I'm here with Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner, and we've got ourselves a very high-powered ultraviolet light, which will fluoresce the glow germ that we're using to demonstrate how soils are trafficked. So, Becky, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start walking down this path that we've created, and Gavin is going to kind of run behind me and show how we move all these soils very efficiently. And I think, Gavin, we're going to go an easy 50 feet.
Yep.
All right. You ready? Let's go. Okay, so we've already walked on this, but as you can see, I'm depositing soil all the way along the go. So let's take a journey.
Now, glow germ is one of the most affordable, easiest training aids that we can use, because it used under the UV light, it fluoresces. And so now we can see, we can make the invisible visible. And so as you can see here, look at the bottom of Jim's shoes there, tracking all that dirt, the bacteria, the viruses, and all the other germs that we're worried about, again, across different surfaces on the floor.
Walk-off mats, Becky, as you know, are one of the most effective tools for removing unwanted soil and contaminants coming into a building. We're actually using them in reverse today, because we're trying to remove this inside of the building. But as you can see, it takes a good 12 feet in order to really start reducing my soil load on my feet. We've also got a little thing employed here. This is called a sticky mat. And what this does is just provide some adhesion and tactile to kind of remove a lot of that last little bit. But we've actually walked a little bit over 50 feet, and we still probably have some bleed out or some soil that moves on beyond this. So very important to understand how soil moves, how important it is to not just clean one area, but clean all areas.
So we know that soil tracks through a building, and we're going to look at some more studies besides that little one that was done, that one that was done at the Experience. So but Doyle, Sean, you've been working a lot with Jim and Daryl Hagan from Jim Manis and Daryl Hagan from Sean. This, why don't you tell everybody about your experiences?
Thank you. Yeah, and actually, just to kind of go back to that video, it represented a product we used to kind of build a soil load that people were tracking across, and that was a product called Glow Germ that is commonly used in cleaning training services in a liquid and a powder form. And we had sprinkled a powder that tends to be kind of the consistency of baby powder, that is pretty tacky and absorbent, and it has a lot of qualities that exhibit what soil tracking is usually done with. And it was one of many examples that we have done on multiple surfaces coming from different amounts across some sort of track-off system that might be maintained, doormats, scrapers, door things. We tried to simulate in one of those what somebody was getting coming off the Las Vegas Strip, and then how far in are they tracking into a hotel or casino from the outside soils were they trying to track in. And so we emulated that a little bit in some of our study and our practice of this kind of environmental just experiment to see how things were going. It is only part of what soil tracking has been done by manufacturers to see at what level should they be recommending proper hot water extraction, which is the basis of what most of their conclusions are for the method they want to have done frequently, but vacuuming and the use of mats in that tracking system. One of the experiments they did was with a large home builders department facilities, and they had gone back into the men's restroom. And in that space, unfortunately, it just isn't as clean as maybe you might hope it would be, even with those fancy mats that often, ladies, men will stand on as they approach the urinals that are in these spaces. But they tracked. And what was interesting is how far away from that hard, sticky now surface were shoes and soiling being tracked without any mat system leaving that restroom, no carpet or anything, and then in through the property from that soil source. It was 100+ feet away from that area that these things were being found. They do at the manufacturer level testing studies to see how many foot traffics does it take to not only abuse and change the texture of a carpet, but to change its physical appearance. And certainly the level of soiling that it's getting is being tested with extraction versus pad cleaning versus bonnet cleaning, which most of the objection comes because of the abrasiveness of the tool, not so much from the inadequacies of the process for appearance. So when it comes down to looking at what reason or purpose is the flooring there, we have to change the level of understanding of what cleaning is being done for and identifying what is clean, at what level of clean are we trying to maintain, and are they going to promote to maintain those things. Cleaning can come down to an evaluation of staining, and particularly a problem in the consumer market that's being tested aggressively is the amount of pet traffic into the residential and commercial market, because most places tend to be pet friendly. And we'll see the basics that the Carpet and Rug Institute has kind of identified as the basic care of how to take care of their products being extended because of that pet use through monster amounts of marketing from the manufacturers. They are building products that are pet friendly, that have been built with yarn systems and staining systems that are more cleanable for that biological contaminant of animal waste, urine waste. They're making products that are developed to keep the surfaces that they're being maintained at points where they don't penetrate through into subsurfaces by putting new backing systems to make their products even more pet friendly. So the pet soiling issue studies that are being done at manufacturing levels, and then their engagement with guys like me at the cleaning level, teaching and dealing with the consumer as well as the professional cleaner on the level of clean, has been exciting. And they continue to see what the market trends are to make products that can handle the kind of abuse that's happening on, on their flooring. So it is, they're back.
Don't you think they're just they're just addressing the reality of the marketplace, which is that most people have pets, so most floors have urine and feces on them or in them.
Absolutely.
And you get tracked across them.
Yep. And they want to make a product that can be clean, maintained, that's easy to service, but that is serviceable at the right point that you can actually get to it, as opposed to the biologicals that then develop down below other surfaces. And they're really excited to make sure that the professional is engaged, understanding what is clean and at what level are you claiming clean, to the point where companies, particularly like Shaw, emphasize in their warranty requirements, heat at above 140 degrees be used in the hot water extraction method that they want to know their products are being maintained with, in the recommendations of chemistry, of good alkalinity balance, and how to leave it residue free at the end of the process. It's all part of that, getting it as clean as under XRF scanning and visual and black light and every other level of evaluation that can be done, all the way to medical grade, because they make products for clean rooms, hard surfaces, and carpet surfaces of all levels to identify at what level is clean needing to be maintained. Is it for pharmaceutical use? Is this facility a daycare center? And do the people running that daycare center actually understand the level of clean and how to properly achieve clean? They've done test studies, like you mentioned earlier, about biological warfare, essentially, but the chemistry warfare that's going on of disinfectants being sprayed, of household level all the way through industrial grade treatments on their products, to know after single or maybe non-cleaning and then applied product use and then reapplied product use again and again and again over long term, how is that in a change of our societies look at what is clean, and they're thinking that makes it clean. How is that affecting their products was the study, but the byproducts showed that the repeated use wasn't necessarily eliminating the problem, and it was causing problems with textiles like nylons and softer natural fibers like wools and viscose and cellulosic based products, more so than the polyester products, which then push them to put products on the floor that aren't being affected by that abuse and misuse. And we start seeing new developments and more developments towards the PET and PTT formulations of plastics in their use versus their older nylon products, because of the ways that repetitive, whether it's chlorine dioxides or bleaching agents like sodium hypochlorite, or uses of our antimicrobial chemistries of all sorts of blends, be between botanicals and phenols and everything under the sun. How does that affect their goods? And in the consumer use or misuse of it, is it going to come back on them if it's, not resistant to that? Their development has shown all sorts of things for the cleaner to be able to be aware of.
In just a minute, we're going to show our audience a whole bunch of studies that demonstrate the contaminants that are still on a floor even after it's been cleaned. And I think one of the most natural outcomes of learning about that, because it's a little scary when you find out that things that you think may look healthy aren't. The first response is often spray disinfectants. And that's really what you and Shaw were doing in looking at how disinfectants affected fibers, fabrics, furnishings, everything in the indoor environment.
Yep, and the repeated use of them without following necessarily the label directions for its anticipated use or reuse is another factor that we have to look at in the contributing, what's happening with clean. But I want to think you also have to consider when we're coming to evaluating it, for example, under UV lights or microscopic use, or using microscopic little things to see more visibly at 100 or 200 times the magnified visual side of it. We're never going to get down to the microscopic biological level that perhaps an ATP meter or surface testing or particle testing can be looking at. It goes down to even dioxins in the environment that you can't necessarily claim removal of, and there's no standard of what is healthy or established okay for certain things in a situation like a fire, whereas mold, if there's any, it's a problem, but toxins that might be developed from burning plastics are not even in the consideration in many of our industry standards of what is coming of what is clean. So I think we have to really understand our client and what the reason for clean, and then help them understand by being educated what it can be done. But speaking on the absorbency of the fibers, even after deep cleaning, some fibers do, even of our most magnificent steam and hot water and the best chemistry choices we can make to remove soils, we'll still see some visual under inspection like UV residues on nylons and wools, where we're still seeing UV fluorescence or the ultraviolet fluorescence even after cleaning, even though it doesn't smell and there's no other visible signs of the damage, because of the way that the absorbency of that nylon holds different minerals and phosphates and magnesiums versus the polyester absorbency and wools and other fibers that might hold some of that residue, where it's not visually displeasing or you're not smelling a problem to the detection of clean, but it may still be there for the client. So really understanding every way we have to evaluate that and the perception of what the customer is going to want at the end of the day is really what's most crucial.
Don't you find it almost exhilarating that a company as large and as Shaw Industries is so deeply involved in the day-to-day issues that we as carpet cleaners are facing and hard surface floor cleaners? Yeah. I mean, just the fact that they admit that this can happen, which is not always great. So what do we do about that? I mean, to me, it's just really important that they support our industry. And I appreciate them coming to the trade shows and writing articles and doing all the things that they do to help us understand the product better.
They are studying their product, obviously, for the reasons of making it better for environmental impact, lasting longer on the floor, the consumer satisfaction process, and all of those byproducts because of their real giving element and connections with our industry as they've done. They're really one of, I would say, the leaders on that side of engagement with the full circle of the cleaning and all the way through with the biggest portions and subsets of our industry. I don't want to say that the others are not, because there is engagement from other major carpet manufacturers and flooring makers, but nowhere are we seeing this level of engagement like we do for Shaw Floors.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you helping out, and I know you're going to stick around as long as you can. Feel free to jump in with any other comments that you have related to what we're discussing, because we're about to get into some deep stuff. And when I say deep stuff, what I mean is a bunch of science. And don't freak out. You don't have to memorize this. There isn't a test at the end, but we want you to see that there is science based on to what we're talking about, how floors get soiled, and what cleaning methods work the best to get all that soil out.
Without leaving.
It started with me about, exactly. It started with me about 2 years ago. We were involved in a study on a big box store. We won't name any names, but if you have an orange bucket, you know where we were. And they were doing a study on a water recycling system. This company was making a water recycling system that they wanted to see if it was applicable to use with people with floor scrubbers, with automatic floor scrubbers, so that you could reuse the same water over and over again in the floor scrubber. So that's what they were evaluating. But they did so they were testing wastewater in an automatic floor scrubber. And what they found, which they weren't even looking for because they were trying to figure out how to clean up the water in the recycling system, is that over 500 feet away from the restrooms in this big box store, there were still high levels of fecal contamination. 500 feet. Now think about that for a minute. Is that all being tracked from the bathrooms? Probably not. Some of these big box stores do allow pets. And if the pet takes a dump in the middle of the store, I highly doubt that they spend the time doing anything other than mopping it up with a quick, scooping it up and mopping it up with a big disinfection solution and moving on. But the fact is that what they were finding is these floors that look clean 500 feet away from the restroom had too high levels of fecal contamination. So let's look at some other studies that have really been telling us more about this than we probably realize. What are we talking about here? What we're really talking about is carpeting and hard surface floors that look clean. In other words, they've reached the level from whatever cleaning process or maintenance process was used on them that to the eye, they look clean. The first studies we want you to look at are from a company named Kaivac. If you're not familiar with Kaivac, they made their name in the janitorial industry in making a hands-free, no-touch bathroom cleaning system. And what their whole system was a cart with all kinds of cleaning instruments that you brought in. And what their understanding of what they were really looking at was mopping and a typical wipe down of a toilet or a urinal that might be done by a janitorial service. So keep that in mind. They have a higher flow system. So they were comparing their systems to what was typically out there. And what they concluded, you can go to their website and see these studies, it says, science has now proven what many cleaning professionals have suspected for years, that wiping surfaces such as desks with rags, sponges, conventional cleaning cloths, as well as mopping floors with string mops and buckets can spread as many contaminants as they remove. In other words, a lot of the cleaning, quote unquote cleaning, that was going on in facilities was more about soil rearrangement than it was soil removal or soil extraction. Let's go on from there. There's other studies that have found clean looking floors to be a reservoir of microbes. In this study, floor surfaces tend to be heavily colonized by bacteria, especially soil-borne bacteria. Fecal contamination was prevalent on floor surfaces, especially dog-specific fecal bacteria. And that's from the National Institute of Health and some of the studies they did. There's a professor at the University of Arizona named Charles Gerba. He's done a lot of these studies, and he's done a lot of studies on fecal matter tracking. Over 90% of fecal matter that shoes pick up in a public restroom and from animal fecal matter outdoors has been shown to transfer to floors throughout a home or facility. 90%. This is what I love. Here's his summary. He says, I'm starting to make myself paranoid. It seems like we step in a lot more poop than I thought. Well, that's about as honest as you can get. So if we're looking at the number of, the transfer rate on bacteria from shoes to clean tiles was between 90 and 99%. And the bacteria found on the footwear included E. coli, which most of us have heard of, as well as other bacteria causing pneumonia and respiratory tract infections. That study is in Very Well Health magazine, but he has, if you just Google his name, you'll find a lot of studies on this. All right, the next thing was floors aren't a touch point. So we don't need to worry about them as much as we say do a counter or a hand banister or something like that. But there now are studies, and these were done during COVID for obvious reasons, that show we touch the floor as many as 50 times a day. We touch the floor directly or indirectly as many as 50 times a day. So we're touching the floor. If we think that we're not, follow us around. Another microbiologist, Dr. Jonathan Hughes, did a study that said that over 100% of the floors they tested were positive for a specific bacteria, and 10% were positive for fecal streptococci. I don't know what that is, but it doesn't sound like something I want to catch. So we know that these are clean floors, okay? Graduate student at the University of Ohio this was just released last spring. She did her doctoral thesis on microbial contaminants on floors after they'd been cleaned. This one will catch your attention. She found in her studies higher levels of pathogenic bacteria on hard surfaces than on carpets. Her conclusion was proper cleaning and sanitizing of both hard surface floors and carpets is critical. And then Dr. Naveed Sela did a study in hospitals. Okay, Doyle, if there's one place where the floors have got to be safe and clean, it's hospitals. Well, if you've had a MRSA infection, you probably caught it at the hospital or at your doctor's office. That's the place where we most commonly catch MRSA. Gyms and locker rooms and things like that are high too, but it's hospitals. In his studies, 22% of the floor sites were positive for Staphylococcus aureus, 33% were positive for another one, 72% of floor sites were positive Clostridium, 1.4 high-touch objects on average were in contact with the floor. This is in a hospital. 24% of high-touch objects were contaminated with more than one pathogen, and 57% of contaminated objects in contact with the floor transferred the bacteria to hands. And that's from Infection Control Today. So there are 7 studies that show you that most floors that look clean still have high levels of potentially harmful contamination on them or in them. So that's the first thing that we can decide today, is that carpet and hard surface floors can be a reservoir and harbor for bacterial contaminants, trapped fecal matter, and other unwanted matter that a low moisture carpet cleaning system, a mop, an auto scrubber, a Swiffer vac, whatever it is, cannot effectively remove.